Jackson guitars are known for being edgy and eye-catching, from the Rhodes and the King V, to the Warrior and the Roswell. Each design is original and unique. Some are more commonly seen, like the Rhodes and the King V, but there are some that are much less common, like the Roswell, or the rarest of them all, the Kelly Star. Today, we're recreating a Kelly Star, and it's one of the baddest builds I've done yet. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and slap the bell to be notified of new episodes. This is Trash to Thrash. For more than 20 years, I've been obsessed with guitars. From playing them, to working on them, to buying and collecting them, I've built quite the collection of awesome custom guitars. Now, I'm turning my passion into a profession by seeking out old, beat-up guitars and giving them new life, all while trying to make a profit. I'll be searching everywhere for used gear that I can refret, rewire, repaint, whatever it takes to make it a real shredder. This is Trash to Thrash. Hello everybody, welcome back to Trash to Thrash. This is the show where we take old, beat up, and often forgot about guitars and rebuild them, turning them into one-of-a-kind custom guitars made not only to look awesome, but sound and play better too. I'm your host, Mark Murray, and today we're recreating one of the most deadly Jackson guitar models ever, the Kelly Star. Many of you probably know the Jackson Kelly. We've even rebuilt a few of them here on the show, but I'm guessing some of you have never seen a Jackson Kelly Star. The Jackson Kelly Star is what you get when you combine the shape of a Jackson Kelly with a Jackson Rhodes. If you overlay them in a certain way, it looks super cool, but they were only made for a very short period of time. The Jackson Kelly was originally introduced in 1983 by Jackson, but the seeds of the Kelly were planted in the late 50s with the Gibson Explorer, which was the inspiration for the Kelly. In 1980, Randy Rhoads and Jackson came up with the Concorde Flying V. As Jackson was establishing itself as one of the top shred guitars, they wanted to expand their lineup and the Kelly was born. In 2000, the Kelly Star was revealed, but it was only sold for 2 years in the USA when it was discontinued from the American market in 2002. Jackson continued to sell the Kelly Star in the Japanese market, along with many other Jackson models under the brand name Jackson Stars. Kelly Stars were equipped with all the shreddiest features like 24 frets, dual humbuckers, a pointy extreme look, and super thin necks. Charvel had been making the more traditional star-shaped guitars throughout the 1980s, but in the 90s, Jackson released the Warrior, which was their first original star-style guitar. About 10 years later, somebody had the idea to combine the Rhodes and the Kelly and create the Kelly Star, which turned out to be a masterpiece in my opinion. Since then, Jackson's even gone on to create a hybrid of the Warrior and the Rhodes. Jackson Kelly Stars are fairly rare. You hardly ever see them come up for sale in the used market. So for today's build, we're going to be using this reproduction Jackson Kelly Star body, and the best part is it's equipped for a single humbucker. Jackson didn't make them like this, but I found it like this online and I knew it had to be the next project guitar that I build myself. I had always wanted a Star, and when I saw this thing, I couldn't hit the buy button fast enough. The first step will be to use this Solarez grain sealer and filler. This guitar is raw poplar wood right now, so if you try to paint directly over it, the paint will sink into the pores and it's not going to lay smooth, so we have to fill the grain first. This was the first brand new body I've ever used and also the first guitar I ever sealed the wood grain on. This stuff sets up fast, so you need to make sure you work quickly before it starts drying. I've since also tried aerosol spray-on sealers, which I don't like quite as much as a brush-on. The brush-on stuff goes on so much thicker, it seals the grain a lot quicker. Although it can be a little bit messier as long as you set up a dedicated spot for this outside, it shouldn't be too messy. This sealer dries in about 15 to 20 minutes if you leave the guitar out in the sun, but I still like to let it set for at least 24 hours before I sand it. When you brush on the sealer, it goes on pretty thick, and with the brush strokes, it's going to make it a little more work to sand than if you do a spray-on sealer. If you have an electric sander like this, then I would recommend using a brush-on sealer, but if you're going to sand it by hand, you might want to consider a spray-on sealer. Now the body is nice and straight, and it's time to throw on some primer. This will let me get a better visual on how well the grain is sealed on this guitar. Originally, I bought this guitar body for a personal project to build myself, but I've been so busy with custom builds for other people that this body has sat on my shelf for almost 2 years untouched. One day I opened an email from Tom saying that he needed a custom star guitar from me, and this thing popped into my head. I've been wanting to build it, whether it's for me or for somebody else. I want to see this thing done. My customer Tom came up with a really awesome idea for this guitar, which I love, combining a bunch of my favorite features onto this awesome star guitar. Now this guitar has a purpose and it's time to get it rolling. We have a couple more steps to do before we bring the guitar back out to the spray booth for its final paint job. Next will be to add the output jack. For this, I clamp the guitar down to the table and I use a Forstner bit. And this hole turned out nice. You can see where it enters the cavity there and where it is on the side of the body. Very centered. Perfect. Now we'll drill the holes to mount the plate on the outside of this output jack hole. I put a piece of tape down and measured the centers so I would know exactly where the mounting holes need to be. Now we'll line up the output jack plate here, and it lines up perfectly with the mounting holes and it covers the big large hole we added, so perfect. Now we need to add some holes for the volume pot and the kill switch. I centered them here in the control cavity and used a center punch to mark them. And then I drilled some pilot holes just to get it so that we could see the holes from the front easier. Now coming through from the top, we'll add the hole for the potentiometer. And using the drill press with a Forstner bit, we'll add the hole for the kill switch. Now we have our holes for our two controls. And we'll need to add some holes here for our screws to hold on the neck. This body shape is so awesome, it needs a neck that's going to be equally awesome. So, for that we turned to Warmoth, who makes custom guitar necks. This neck came in decked out. We got it with a maple core, an ebony fretboard, 24 fret extension on it, shark fin inlays that glow in the dark, a 12-inch to 16-inch compound radius, a 1 and 11/16 inch nut width, so it matches a lot of the same specs as a Jackson, but also goes over the top with the glow-in-the-dark inlays, and it's got Dunlop 6100 jumbo frets on it. It also has Warmoth's thin neck profile, so this thing is gonna shred. At this point, the new custom neck has arrived from Warmoth, and this thing is a beauty. We got it decked out with all these cool features, including the glow-in-the-dark inlays, but for some reason they don't offer the glowing side dots. So I got some luminlay material, and we're adding them. I'll have a step-by-step tutorial up on the GuitarGuts YouTube page, teaching you guys how to do this in the next week. But I'll give you a quick rundown right now. As you can see, I start by drilling out the old side dots. Then I put a drop or two of CA glue in the hole I just drilled. Then I insert the whole stick of side dot material nice and straight. When it dries, I take a pair of cutters and just cut it right off. It usually leaves a little bit left behind here. And to get that nice and flush, I use an X-Acto knife with this chisel blade on it. And then I finish the job off by sanding it with some 600 grit sandpaper. And these things turned out pretty nice, I gotta say. I'll show you the glowing later in the video. This is definitely a mod I want to do to more guitars in the future. Since this body and this neck have never met before, I went ahead and installed the claw for the tremolo so we could mount the neck and test and make sure everything's lining up correctly. You can see the strings are nice and centered on the neck, and that's exactly what we're looking for. Now that we have the neck and the bridge in place, we can put the pickup mounting holes in. We'll be using a pickup ring on this guitar, so I went ahead and marked the holes here, and now we'll drill them in. And after a test fit of the pickup ring, it looks like this thing is just about ready to pull back apart and bring out to the spray booth for its final paint job. Now for this guitar, we didn't go over the plan at the beginning of the episode, and that's because I wanted you to be surprised as we moved along. But now that we're in the spray booth, there's no hiding the paint job that's going on this beast. We're going with a matte black base, then we'll seal that in with some Spray Max matte clear, and of course we're matching the headstock on this one. But now it's time for the fun part. It's getting some splatter. Bright green alien blood splatter, that is, one of my all-time favorite paint jobs. Alright, we start with the back so I can get a feel for how the material will run on the guitar, then I spin it around and throw it on the front. And this thing looks wicked. You guys leave some great comments for these videos. I love hearing your thoughts and opinions, so as you're watching, leave your comments down in the comments section. Right now I want to highlight a couple of the comments from the last episode of Trash to Thrash with the Crackle Gibson Flying V. First off, a bunch of you out there went and picked up some GuitarGuts t-shirts last week, and I appreciate that. Thanks so much. I'm rocking the Psychedelic Alien t-shirt today, and I love this shirt. It's available over at GuitarGuts.com in the guitar shop along with the Werewolf t-shirt. They're about 15 bucks each and it helps support GuitarGuts. The next group of comments are regarding a correction. I had said that the Gibson Flying V was a neck-through guitar, and that simply isn't true. It's actually a set neck guitar. I was just mistaken on that one. In the last episode I did a poll asking who's your favorite Gibson Flying V player. Many people were upset I didn't include Randy Rhoads on that list, but he actually didn't play Gibson Flying Vs. He was a Gibson Les Paul custom player, and he designed the Jackson Flying V, but his original Polka Dot V was made by Carl Sandoval, a well-known custom guitar maker. That's why he wasn't technically on that list. If it were asking who were the greatest Flying V players, then I'd have to put him on the top of that list. The poll I conducted had James Hetfield atop the list, and many people commented that he didn't play Gibson Flying Vs, that he used a knockoff Flying V made by Elektra on Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning, which is true, but he's definitely still known for playing Gibson Flying Vs as well, second, of course, to his Explorers. Then there was the comment, Gibson keeps its value, and this one looked in good shape to me. So haven't you devalued the guitar by respraying it and adding switches and stuff? It has a cool new look, but I think it looked better before. This comment's from Jay, and I get questions like this from time to time. He's right, Gibsons do hold their value pretty well, but with the shape that it was in, it had been sanded through to the wood in quite a few spots, so it had unprotected wood, the electronics had already been swapped out as well. A new paint job and rewiring can actually improve the value of an instrument when you use high quality parts and they're installed properly. The Tone Pros Tune-O-Matic Bridge and Grover tuners are upgrades for this guitar as well. So if you were to put this guitar up on the market next to the before version of the guitar, the newer version would certainly fetch more cash than the beat up one, the way it originally arrived at the shop. But despite that, it's not always about the value to the customer, it's about having a one-of-a-kind unique instrument with sentimental value. This guitar was actually from the Gibson Faded line, which tend to be worth a little bit less than the standard line. And if this was a 1958 Flying V or a 60s model, I'm sure the owner would have preserved it or even sold it off to a collector, because these types of mods certainly would devalue a vintage instrument from the 50s or 60s. Now let's jump back in on the build. Now the guitar is just about ready to reassemble, and we'll start by oiling the neck with some tongue oil. Warmoth recommends putting a hard finish on this like some paint or polyurethane, but the customer wanted a tongue oil finish because it provides a nice smooth finish that's easy to play on. For this build, my customer wanted Goto tuners, which are my favorite tuners, so that's what we went with on this one. With the truss rod cover, the nut, and the tuners mounted, the headstock is now complete. I think it looks great. It's not officially a Jackson, so that's why we didn't put a Jackson logo on it. As I was getting this guitar wrapped up, I noticed there was no back cavity covers for it. I always have extra material around, so I went over the bandsaw and I made a cover for the electrical cavity and for the spring cavity for the tremolo. Now we've got the electronics mounted in the guitar. As you can see, it's an EMG 81 pickup, a single humbucker in this guitar. We also wired up a green LED Tessie kill switch. And this episode of Trash to Thrash is sponsored by Tessie. They have a great line of kill switches over on their website. They have great customer service, great prices, and if you enter GuitarGuts at checkout, you get 15% off your purchase. You cannot beat that. I have a link down in the description to their website. Go get yourself a Tessie kill switch. For the bridge on this guitar, we went with the black original Floyd Rose. It's a tried and true classic. As we're installing the strings on the guitar, it's increasing the tension on the top of the guitar, so we're counteracting that by adding the springs to the backside of the guitar. I can see this guitar is going to need a string retainer, because when you push down on the string between the nut and the tuners, you can see the string is not sitting flush across the nut. If you look close, it's rising up and down above the nut as you push down between the tuner and the nut. It should be laying across the nut, so we'll install a string retainer to pull it down. Due to the width of the truss rod cover and where the string retainer needs to be placed, we actually had to drill holes through the cover for the string retainer to be mounted properly. It's a bit unfortunate because to adjust the truss rod, we'll have to remove the string retainer, then remove the truss rod cover, and you could reattach the string retainer after. Now it's time to start getting this guitar set up and ready to play. For the strings, we're going with Ernie Ball's Hybrid Slinkies. This guitar will be set up in half step down, meaning E flat, so these strings are sort of in between a 9 and a 10. So you'll get a little better playability and bendability on the higher strings since they're the lighter gauge, and a little bit beefier of the lower strings to give you a heavier tone. I personally play a wide variety of strings because I play in a lot of different tunings, ranging from classic rock music and standard to progressive metal where I'll use much lower tunings. For these different tunings, you'll want to use different string gauges so you'll have a proper tension on your strings. I personally like 8s or 9s for standard tuning, 10s for half step down, 11s for full step down, and 12s for 1.5 steps down. Let me know in the comments what kind of strings do you like. Now, this guitar is fully assembled and strung up. Are you ready for the reveal? Be sure to hit that like button right now and leave a comment letting me know what you think of this guitar. Now there's one other really cool mod we did to this guitar, the glow-in-the-dark fret markers. How awesome is this? And they're pretty bright too. The shark fins were done by Warmoth, but the side markers were done by me. You really don't have to do much to charge them up either. You just leave the lights on for 20 minutes or so and they glow. This is something I definitely want to incorporate into more builds. I mean, it is a bit unnecessary for some people, but when you're on stage and it gets dark, this could definitely come in handy. Alright, what'd you guys think of this beast? Let me know down in the comments. I personally love this guitar. I originally bought the body for myself, but I never imagined that it would turn out this cool. It's really one of my favorite looking builds I've ever done, and it combines so many things that I love in a guitar. It's just so cool. Thanks again to Tessie for sponsoring this episode, and thanks so much to you for watching and subscribing. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next episode. Rock on, my friends! On the next episode of Trash to Thrash, we're reaching for the stars. A Charvel star to be specific. That's right, back-to-back custom star builds. This one's for the same customer who bought this week's Kelly Star. He's a star fanatic. Tom has great taste in guitars, so tune back in next week to see the unofficial part 2 to this episode as we rebuild a Charvel Desolation Star for him that turns out absolutely wicked. In the meantime, check out one of these classic episodes of Trash to Thrash. Here we have episode 1. Here we have an episode featuring a Jackson Kelly. And here's one featuring a Jackson Rhodes. If you haven't yet, hit that like button right now and then select your next episode. Rock on, my friends.